Hi there, Jean Greer here at Stylish Fireplaces. Today I want to talk about heat. These are questions that we get a lot in our showroom. How much heat do I need? And what's the difference between an electric fireplace and a gas fireplace when it comes to heat? So let's start with how much heat do I need? If you're lucky enough to be moving into a new home, you have to know that the homes that are being constructed now are much more energy efficient and heat efficient than the homes that were built 5, 10, 15, 20, or 30 years ago. So if you're moving into a new home and you haven't lived in a new home for a while, you need to understand that there won't be the cold spots that you're used to in your older home. So they have better insulation, better windows, better doors. They're just being built to a different standard, and the chances that you're going to have cold rooms is it's a very slim chance. So think about that and be prepared to have a little different experience of the heat in your room. The homes that are being built now also have more efficient HVAC systems. So all in all, they're doing a really good job of keeping us warm without the supplemental heat from a fireplace. So that's what's happening with new homes. Now, if you live in an older home, like I have a bungalow that's from the 70s and my living room, dining room is over the garage, and nothing I do is going to make that room be at the same temperature as the rest of the house. So we need a little bit of supplemental heat out there. Basements are cooler in those houses as well. Even after you renovate, there can be some cold spots. So there are situations where we are looking for a little bit of supplemental heat in our rooms. But just keep in mind that a new home is probably not going to be the same. And if you're moving from a 20 or 30-year-old home into a new home, you've got to get your head around the fact that you probably won't have cold spots like you're used to. So that's number one. And then you should be thinking about primary versus zone heat. So we're not putting fireplaces in most instances as a primary source of heat. I mean, unless you're living off the grid and your fireplace really is going to be your source of heat in the winter, you're not putting a fireplace in as a primary source of heat. Your HVAC system is doing the heavy lifting, and you may want some supplemental heat in the room. You may not need any heat in the room, but you still want a fireplace. So keep that in mind. Zone heating is when we just heat up the area that we're using without heating up the whole home. So your furnace, your HVAC system does a job of heating or cooling the entire home through venting and so forth. A fireplace could strictly be for zone heating, so just the room that I'm in right now, because this room is cooler and I don't want to turn the furnace up in the rest of the house. That's zone heating. How does an electric fireplace compare to gas? Electric fireplaces do have heaters. 99.9% of them are being built with heaters in them. Typically, if an electric fireplace heater is on, there's a blower that is on automatically. The blowers are very quiet, and they have different settings to push the heat out into the room. So a lot of people don't realize that electric has heat. It does. So the electric fireplaces do have heaters. Like I said, 99.9% of them have heaters in them. And the size of the fireplace with electric does not determine the heat output, generally speaking. So I've got a whole bunch of different sizes behind me here. I've got 60 inches, 74 inches. I've got some small inserts at the side here. Generally speaking, on a 120 volt connection, those are going to have roughly the same amount of heat, and that would max out around 5,000 BTUs. You don't really need to know what a BTU is or how it's determined or measured, but 5,000 BTUs, we would equate that to a 400 to 500 square foot area. So in the first few minutes of operation, an electric fireplace with 5,000 BTUs of heat is going to heat up a 400 to 500 square foot area. It's going to take the chill off. It is not meant to be the primary source of heat, but if you're trying to warm up that space, 400 to 500 square feet. Think about the size of the rooms in your home. Most of your main floor spaces are going to be within 400 to 500 square feet, your bedrooms, etc. Only in big open basements would you tend to get into a bigger space than that for the average home. So 5,000 BTUs on 120 volts. Some of our electric fireplaces can connect to 240 volts, and the primary motivation for doing that is if I want more heat output than I can get on 120 volts. So I can get 8, 9, maybe 10,000 BTUs on 240 volts, and obviously that's going to heat up a bigger area. If I'm at 400 to 500 square feet at 5,000 BTUs, then 10,000 BTUs would be roughly double. And that's more suited to perhaps those big open basements where we really do need to add supplemental heat to a slightly bigger area. Now let's compare that to gas. A gas fireplace, when the flame is on, the heat is on. And that heat is generally going to start around 18 to 20,000 BTUs and go up from there. And typically with gas, the bigger the burner, the more heat it's going to put out because it's burning more fuel to fill that bigger burner. That's a generalization, but just think of it in those terms. So as those wide fireplaces get wider and wider, that burner gets wider, it's pumping out more heat potentially. So if 5,000 BTUs equates to 400 square feet, then 20,000 BTUs is 4 times that. So you're talking 1,600 square feet, and that's a small gas fireplace at 20,000 BTUs. So that's a big space that needs to absorb the heat that's coming out of that fireplace. If your room isn't that large, then it's too much heat. And the biggest complaint we get in our showroom is, yes, I've had a gas fireplace, but it would get so hot I would have to turn the thing off because my room would get too warm. And there is some flexibility with the adjustments on the flame, and so you can turn down that heat a little bit, but as you're turning down the heat on your gas fireplace, you're typically reducing the size of the flame, which affects the appearance. And there are some gas models now that are taking that heat and redirecting it away from that room. It can direct it into another space in the home. It can direct it up through the chimney and keep it away from the room. But that is not the majority of the models that you typically are going to see out there. So just keep in mind that if you're putting in a gas fireplace at 20, 30, 40,000 BTUs, where is that heat going to go? And do you really need that much heat in that room? And don't fall victim to the idea that that heat is somehow going to go out the doorway and turn corners and go down the hall and heat some other parts of your home, because that's not how the heat travels. So unless you're specifically putting in a ventilation system that redirects it to other parts of the house, which is certainly not the typical fireplace that's available to you, then you're going to have a lot of heat coming out into your typical room in your home. And do you really need that much heat? And the experience of most of our clients who are coming in who've had a gas fireplace or who have one, who've moved into a home with one, is it's simply too much heat for that space. So just something to keep in mind. With electric, if the heater is on, the flames can be on, but you can also have the flames on without the heater. So you have a lot more flexibility. And you can set the heater to a certain temperature, and let's say it gets to that temperature, the heater will go off on the electric fireplace, but the flames can stay on. So you have a lot more flexibility to accommodate the size of the rooms in your home to get that zone heating without heating yourself out of the room. So that's sort of Heat 101. I've really simplified it, but it's really important to know how much heat do I really need and how does electric compare to gas, and then decide which makes the most sense for you and whether or not you need a lot of heat all of the time, or whether you really need to have a little bit of heat once in a while. But most of the time I'm looking for an aesthetic feature that I can gather everyone around in the space and enjoy the aesthetics of a fireplace without necessarily having a lot of heat in the room. If you have more questions about that, we're happy to guide you through it. There is information at stylishfireplaces.ca, and you can always reach out to us and get more details that are pertinent to your particular situation through chat, through email, through the phone, and look through our blog at stylishfireplaces.ca, and you'll find more answers there. We also have FAQs, frequently asked questions. So lots of information. I don't want to overwhelm you at this point, but these are the basics of heat and how to determine how much you need and how to compare gas to electric.